Hey guys, tonight we begin with the surprisingly well-documented and often wildly misunderstood daily life of Roman prostitutes. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up, or more accurately, you regain consciousness, in a space barely large enough to turn around without elbowing a wall. Congratulations! You live in a cellar, the ancient Roman version of a work-from-home setup. If your home was a broom closet and your job required body oil, these rooms are standard issue for many of Rome's working women. Whether you work in a brothel, **, above a tavern, or beside a bathhouse, your space is less bedroom and more closet with ambition. Your mattress is straw-stuffed, probably shared with fleas, and it smells faintly of old wine, lamp oil, and disappointment. There's a single shelf with your prized possessions: a cracked bronze mirror, some powder, rouge, a comb with 3 missing teeth, and a worn-out vial of perfume strong enough to mask a murder scene. There's no plumbing, just a bucket. We don't talk about the bucket. Bathing? That's a group activity later in the thermi, the public bathhouse where the water is communal and the awkward eye contact is free. But you won't linger there, time is money, and you're behind already. Because here's the thing, your office doesn't have hours. Customers knock when they want, yell when they're drunk, and barge in when they've had a bad day. You are always open for business, even when you're asleep, especially when you're asleep. So you begin your morning routine, which is less about beauty and more about damage control. You wipe down the bench, try to sweep away whatever the last guy tracked in. Sandals, grime, maybe a coin or two if you're lucky, and get to work. Rouge for the cheeks, powder to hide the exhaustion, and perfume so sharp it could double as mace. You check yourself in the bronze mirror. Not because it flatters you, it doesn't, but because pretending to care is part of the job. You rehearse a sultry smile. Not because it works, but because if you don't practice it, it slips and gets replaced by the truth. You were once called meretrix, a Roman prostitute. Not an insult, a category. Rome, unlike many ancient civilizations, regulated you, taxed you, branded you. Literally, in some cases, a tattoo on your arm might mark you as registered with the state. You're technically government approved, your body, a licensed service. And in the social hierarchy, you are many things: entertainer, confessor, commodity, scapegoat. There are levels, of course. If you're extremely lucky and had the right connections, you might be a courtesan or delicata, catering to wealthy senators and merchants. You'd wear silk, compose poetry, and talk philosophy in candlelit rooms. But you're not that lucky. You work in the subura, a dense, noisy, chaotic district full of smells, fights, food stalls, bathhouses, and temples. Here, everyone's shouting. Nothing is clean. Everything is for sale. The floor is cobbled but always slick with something, and the crowds never stop moving. The streets have rules. You just don't make them. A young man, barely older than a boy, approaches your door. He's nervous, fidgeting, probably his first time. You know the type. You paste on a smile, invite him in, and the routine begins. You're not just selling your body. You're selling silence, tension, a brief moment where someone else gets to feel important. It's over quickly. It usually is. He stammers, blushes, hands you a coin, and leaves without looking back. You stare at the money. It's not enough. It never is. You step outside for air. The street is alive now. Vendors yelling about olives, bakers hauling fresh loaves, children chasing each other barefoot through the mud. Somewhere down the alley, a fight is already breaking out. Someone's yelling about debts. You make your way to the public baths. The water is lukewarm and a little murky, but it's better than nothing. You scrub off the morning, keeping one eye on your things and another on the men watching you. Later, you stop by a tiny shrine. You light incense for Venus. Not because you think she'll answer, but because hope is cheaper than wine. You whisper a prayer anyway. Back at your room, you check your makeup. Fix the lamp. Sweep again. Another knock. And another. And another. This is the rhythm. This is your day. You don't keep track of time by the sun. Not in here. The sun doesn't reach your walls. You measure the day by knocks, by coins, by how many times you have to reapply your powder before it stops hiding the exhaustion. Your second visitor of the day is older. He pretends not to know you, even though he's been here twice this week. He talks too much. You nod where it's needed, laugh when it helps, and mentally count the cracks in the wall behind him until it's over. He gives you 2 coins instead of 1 today. You don't ask why. You never ask why. In Rome, no one really cares why you do what you do. It's assumed. You're a slave, or a freed woman, or just desperate. Maybe all 3, maybe none. Doesn't matter. Once you enter this world, your past becomes a fog that only matters to you. In some districts, you might be forced to wear specific clothes, cheap yellow dresses called toga muliebris, once reserved for married women but eventually used to mark prostitutes. A symbol of inverted honor. In others, it's less formal. Just makeup, open sandals, and the smell of perfume and desperation. There's no uniform for being used. By midday, the streets are louder, more chaotic. The vendors are hawking dried fish, boiled beans, and watered-down wine. You buy a bit of bread with 1 coin, tearing it in half to save some for later. Food is never guaranteed. Customers sometimes pay in trade oil, cloth, or nothing but promises. You walk down the alley to visit Livia. Livia works a few doors down. She's older, once beautiful in a way that people paid extra for. Now her eyes are tired, her smile stiff, and her hands constantly tremble. She used to have a regular client, a merchant who swore he'd marry her. He disappeared last spring off to Alexandria. She says she's over it. She's not. You sit on her stoop and talk, just for a few minutes. You trade stories, tips, bad jokes. Someone walks by and throws a coin at your feet. You don't react. Livia does. She throws it back. The man laughs. Later, you return to your room, where the oil in your lamp is nearly gone. You ration it, just enough to last through the evening. You check your hair, fix your dress, clean under your nails with a pin. Another knock. This one reeks of garlic and entitlement. He tries to get rough. You push back gently, carefully. Anger is dangerous. It makes men sloppy. And in your line of work, a sloppy man can become a violent one in a heartbeat. You calm him with a whisper, a touch on the wrist, a lie. He leaves thinking he's conquered something. You're just glad he's gone. You pour water from your chip jug and clean yourself as best you can. You hide the coin under your mattress. Not because you don't trust your neighbors, you don't, but because it's all you have and tonight isn't over yet. It never really ends. Rome doesn't sleep. It simmers. Outside, the sky darkens. Lamps flicker to life in the windows of wealthier homes. You watch them from a distance, imagining what it's like to eat by candlelight, to sit in silence, to have doors that lock from the inside. You see the priestess walk by, her robes untouched by dirt, her feet clean, her head high. She's not supposed to look at you. You're ritually impure after all. But she glances anyway, just for a moment. A flash of pity? Curiosity? It doesn't matter. You go inside. Another knock. It's dark now. Not the comforting kind of dark. The kind that settles around your shoulders like a heavy blanket soaked in wine and sweat. This is Roman dark, alive with shouts, clattering carts, distant dogs, and the murmur of drunks wandering home too late or rising too early. The lamps outside your brothel flicker with cheap oil and cracked glass. They don't keep anyone safe. They only help the city see what it pretends not to notice. Another knock. This one is soft, timid, a young man, maybe 15. You recognize the look. Ashamed, nervous, eyes darting like a rabbit in a lion's den. He says nothing, just hands you a coin and lowers his gaze. You let him take his time. He's gentle, but his hands shake. You don't ask why. Maybe this is his first time. Maybe this is the only place he's allowed to be who he really is. By the time he leaves, he's still quiet, but calmer. You lean against the wall for a moment and close your eyes. Just for a moment. The wood behind your back is splintered and cold, but it's solid, real, something to lean on in a world that offers little else. Your stomach growls. You chew the rest of your bread slowly, swallowing dry, tasteless chunks like they're a feast. You wash it down with stale water. No one drinks straight from the Tiber unless they want to see their own guts again by morning. The water's filtered through clay jars, stone basins, prayers, and it still tastes like regret. Outside, a patrol of Roman guards passes. They don't bother you, not tonight, but you know their eyes. You've seen them before. Some of them have visited, others just smirk. One of them, Cassius, is the kind who pays and then stays too long talking like your lovers, telling you stories about battles and boredom, as if your silence is a reward. He once said you reminded him of his sister. Then he touched your thigh. You didn't ask how he treats his sister. Midnight approaches. In this world, time doesn't matter except when the temple bells ring or when the rich go to sleep and the poor crawl out for breath. You're part of the in-between. You're not supposed to be seen in daylight, yet never fully belong to the night. You hear footsteps, heavy, confident, not drunk, dangerous. You freeze. The door creaks. It's a man you know by name but not by choice. He doesn't pay. He doesn't ask. He carries a badge, a symbol of borrowed authority. You say nothing. You keep your face still, like marble, like every statue of every silent woman carved into the forum, beautiful and empty. He leaves after a while. You don't cry, not because you're strong, but because crying takes water. And water is for wounds that heal. You clean yourself with trembling fingers. The jug is nearly empty. The rag is rough. The lamp burns lower now, casting long shadows on the wall like ghosts creeping from your skin. You whisper a prayer, not to Jupiter or Venus or even Diana. You pray to the wall, to the roof beam, to whatever hears and doesn't judge. You pray that tomorrow you wake up, and if not, that at least you don't feel anything. You lie down on the straw mattress. You curl your legs to fit inside the frame. You cover your face with a cloth to keep the fleas from biting your eyelids. Sleep doesn't come, but morning always does. You wake up with a dry mouth and a sore back. There's no sunrise in this room, only the slow shift of noise outside. Vendors setting up, carts rolling by, the distant clang of blacksmiths and the shriek of caged animals at the market. The city wakes like a beast, groaning, hungry, restless. You sit up slowly. Your neck clicks. Your knees ache. You're 24 but feel like 60. There's blood on the cloth you used as a pillow. Not fresh, just dried at the corner of your mouth from a cracked lip. You touch your face. Your cheek is swollen. You forgot about that. Or maybe you just stopped caring. Your first task is always the same. Make yourself presentable. Which is funny considering the job. But appearances matter. Not because they care what you look like, but because it helps them forget what you really are. You smear a little powder under your eyes, add color to your cheeks to fake the flush of desire. You fix your hair, pull it tight, tuck in the strands. There's no mirror today. Someone broke it last night, or stole it, or both. You work by touch and memory. The face they want isn't really yours anyway. There's a thump at the door. Bread. A neighbor girl. 8 years old. Sharp eyes, dirty hands. Drops off your ration from the baker's boy. He doesn't charge you anymore. Not since you helped him get rid of a fever last winter with vinegar and boil thyme. You're not just a prostitute. You're also the closest thing to a healer some of them know. A priestess of practical survival. You thank the girl with a coin and a nod. She runs off. You eat slowly. Chewing is careful work when a tooth is loose. Outside, the street is already full. Men shouting about fish, leather, figs. Women bartering for flour. Soldiers laughing too loudly. Children chasing stray dogs. Life in the Roman Empire, the eternal spectacle. And beneath it all, the quiet, unnoticed work of people like you, who grease the gears behind the scenes. A woman down the hall is already working. You hear her fake moans echoing faintly through the thin wood. She used to be a dancer in Gaul. She told you once that her name used to mean light. You don't remember what it is now. You just call her Room 3. You pour some oil onto a rag and rub it into your shoulders. The bruises will fade faster that way. You've learned every trick to heal a body with nothing but common herbs, sweat, and time. You could teach a physician how to reset a bone, but no one would ever ask. By midday, the heat is rising. The air thickens. The walls sweat. You feel it in your lungs. Dust, smoke, spices, rot. Someone nearby is cooking onions. Someone else is pouring out chamber pots into the alley. The smell rises like a second atmosphere. Rome's perfume. A client arrives, well-dressed, gold ring, clean sandals. He looks like someone who reads scrolls for pleasure. His smile is too polite. You put on your face again, the one that looks like you're listening and not screaming. You pretend not to see the wedding band. You let him talk about politics, poetry, the state of the provinces. As if this is dinner. As if your floor isn't stained with last week's blood and olive oil. When he finishes, he thanks you. You nod. He leaves behind a silver coin and the scent of almond oil. You stare at it for a long time before picking it up. Silver is good. It means food tonight. Maybe even wine. Maybe a moment in the bathhouse without looking over your shoulder. But it also means staying. Surviving another day. Sometimes that feels like the harder choice. You tuck the coin into the folds of your tunic, behind a loose board where you keep your hoard of hope. It's not much. A few coins, a seashell, a strip of ribbon, a ring that never fit. You sit back down on the mattress. You breathe. You listen. And then you wait. The late afternoon light filters through cracks in the ceiling boards above. You watch it dance across the dust in the air. Tiny golden motes drifting like spirits, soft and silent. For a moment, it almost feels peaceful. Almost. Outside your door, footsteps shuffle, voices drift. Latin, Greek, even a little Punic. The empire speaks in many tongues, and this street hears them all. You're nestled in the Subura district now. Rome's beating, sweating, stinking heart. The slums are alive with stories, if you know how to listen. And you do. You've learned that the baker's boy is sleeping with the laundress who married the tanner. You've learned that one of your clients, Marcus, the port official, embezzles grain shipments and pays you in coin meant for the temple. You've learned the senator's son likes to dress like a slave and beg in disguise just for the thrill of being humiliated. Secrets are currency in your world, sometimes more valuable than money. You keep them in your head, filed away with faces and smells and scars. They keep you safer than muscle ever could. A soft knock is not a client. You recognize the rhythm, two short, one long. It's Livia. She enters quietly. Another woman like you, a few years younger, eyes too old for her face. She limps slightly, favoring her left leg. An old injury from a Roman soldier who didn't like the word no. She drops onto your floor, exhales, and says nothing. You sit in silence together. This is the kind of friendship you form here. Not with words, but with shared bruises, stolen bread, and the quiet understanding that you both lived through the night. Eventually, she tells you that Fausta is gone. She tried to run. Again. This time, they caught her. You nod. You don't cry. Fausta had red hair, a mean laugh, and a plan to escape to Hispania with a merchant she swore loved her. You knew that merchant. He loved himself. Livia shrugs, eyes hollow. Then she leaves. You return to your chores. There are linens to rinse out. The water is cold, carried from the public fountain in a cracked amphora. You scrub with ashes and lye, the stench sharp in your nostrils. Your hands burn, your knuckles split open, but they're clean. For now, night approaches slowly. You hear the change in the street. Day vendors fold their carts and roll away. Drunken laughter replaces market haggling. The scent of roasting meat mixes with human filth. The temples close. The taverns open. The lamps are lit, flickering like stars in the underworld. This is when you earn. You step outside for the first time today. The cool air kisses your skin, but the smell nearly chokes you. Urine, smoke, wine, cheap perfume, something dead under the stairs. You walk with practiced sway, eyes half-lidded, mouth soft. Not smiling, never smiling, but inviting. You pass a group of soldiers. One reaches for you. You twist just enough to seem playful, just enough to avoid his grip. Not tonight. A man waits near the public bath. Middle-aged, balding, merchant class. You recognize him. He's kind. Mostly. He pays. He washes. He tells you stories about the sea. He pretends not to notice your limp when you're tired. You go with him, not because you want to, because he's better than most, and because you need another coin for tomorrow. You don't return to your room after the merchant. Instead, you head toward the public bathhouse. Not for pleasure, never that. It's routine, maintenance, survival. The thermi are still open, their torchlit arches glowing dimly through the night's haze. You pay your entry with the last coin he gave you and step inside the heat. The first wave is always the worst, warm, wet, and thick with the scent of hundreds of unwashed bodies attempting to wash themselves. The air tastes of oil, mildew, and skin. You pass through the apoditerium, where men and women sit on benches, stripping down, chatting like they aren't naked. You place your clothes in a niche in the wall and hope nobody steals them. Hope doesn't go far in Rome. Inside the caldarium, the heat hits you like a brick wall. Your pores open before you can exhale. The marble floor is slick, and your feet sting on the hot tiles. You ladle steaming water over your shoulders, watching the day bleed from your skin in streaks of ash and scent. There's a long crack down your right heel. It splits further when soaked. Someone beside you coughs. You don't look. You move to the tepidarium and then finally the frigidarium, where the cold water is merciless but refreshing. It cleans you the way fire purifies iron. Not gently, but thoroughly. Afterward, you dry yourself with the edge of your tunic. You have no towel. As you leave, someone whistles. A man approaches, tall, cloaked, expensive. His sandals are dyed red, his teeth white. His toga is edged with purple senatorial class. Busy tonight? He asks, like he's ordering wine, not talking to a person. You hesitate. His kind is dangerous. Not always with fists, though sometimes, but with words, with favors owed, with promises that tangle and tighten around your throat like rope. Still, a client is a client. He wants you for the night, not an hour, not a quick exchange. The night. He names a price that makes you blink. 3 times your usual rate. You say nothing for a moment, then nod. Because what choice do you have? He leads you not to a room above a tavern, but to a domus, a private home gated and shadowed. The floors are mosaics. The walls are painted with gods and monsters. He has a wife, children. You hear them laughing in another room. You go upstairs. You don't ask questions. In the flicker of lamplight, he tells you about his plans for war, his disdain for the Senate, his dreams of power. He unburdens himself as if your ears were confession booths and your body a sponge. When he finishes, he sleeps, deep and loud. You lie awake, staring at the painted ceiling. The goddess Venus stares back. She holds a dove in one hand, a mirror in the other. You wonder what she would think of you. Would she be ashamed? Or would she understand? The moonlight moves across the floor, slow as spilled milk. At dawn, you dress. Quietly, you count the coins left on the table. All there. You leave before the children wake. You make your way to the nearby temple of Venus. Not because you're pious, but because sometimes pretending helps. Prostitutes in Rome are technically under the protection of Venus, goddess of love, beauty, and, ironically, lawful prostitution. You light a small clay candle at the altar, not expecting a miracle, but hoping that maybe Venus still hears girls like you. Girls who barter their bodies and lose pieces of their souls with every transaction. You whisper nothing aloud. Just close your eyes. Just breathe. Then back to the streets. The tax collector spots you before you spot him. He knows your name. He knows where you work. He knows how much you've earned this week. More than you expected. Less than you need. You pay him in silence. He doesn't thank you. You don't expect it. In the Empire's eyes, you are property that pays rent to exist. You sometimes wonder if the slaves at the baths have it worse. At least they're not taxed. But they also can't walk away. Neither can you, really. You hear laughter nearby. A group of upper-class Roman women, strolling in crisp stolas, shaded by slaves carrying parasols. One glances at you and sneers. The others giggle. You're a fixture to them. A cautionary tale in cheap perfume. But you smile anyway. Not for them, for yourself. Because you've learned that smiling when you're supposed to feel shame is a tiny act of rebellion. At the market, you buy a bruised fig and a piece of bread with what's left from last night. You eat sitting on the edge of a public fountain, feet aching, dress damp with someone else's sweat. A boy tries to sell you a charm against illness. He swears it's blessed by Apollo himself. You don't buy it. You're not afraid of sickness. Not anymore. You've seen things no god would claim. Back at the brothel, a fight has broken out. Two clients, drunk and jealous. One throws a stool. Another grabs a girl by the hair. The madam steps in, calm as ever, and threatens to call the vigiles. They back off, cursing. One spits on the floor. You hand the girl a cloth for her face. She's bleeding from the lip. She thanks you with her eyes. You say nothing, because in this place silence is currency too. When night comes, you return to your room. You light your oil lamp again. It flickers just like yesterday, just like you. You touch the wooden wall, where you've etched a name long ago. Yours, not the one they gave you for work. Your real one. A secret only you and the wall know. You trace the letters just once, before crawling back onto the straw bed. Another day done. Not glorious, not tragic, just real. And tomorrow you'll do it all again. Morning again. No roosters here. Just the sound of wooden sandals on stone outside your door. Someone's arguing with the baker downstairs. And for a moment you pretend it's not your world. That you're in a countryside villa, with olive trees and clean sheets and no one knocking for your body. But the pounding at your door returns you to Rome. You work a festival today. Saturnalia, or maybe Lupercalia. You stop keeping track. All you know is, during festivals, people pay more and act worse. You dress differently. A gold thread in your hair, a touch more rouge on your cheeks. The streets are louder today, full of flutes and shouting, and people drunk before noon. One man is painted blue and naked except for a laurel crown. Another wears a goat mask. Everyone is pretending. You join them. A client wants a goddess tonight. He says you must be Venus herself. You agree because Venus doesn't have to scrub linens or worry about fleas. He gives you a laurel sprig to bite between your teeth. You do it. Not for him, for the coin. Later, in your room, you find a small wax tablet on your floor. Not yours. Someone else left it. A message? It says simply, "You looked like someone I used to love." You don't know whether to be flattered or terrified. You burn it in the lamp flame. Midday now. A fellow worker named Livia joins you outside the latrine. She's older, sharper. Smokes cheap incense, not because she likes it, but because it hides the stench of everything else. She tells you a story about a senator who cried after the act. Said his wife hadn't touched him in years. You don't know whether to feel pity or disgust. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. You ask Livia if she ever wanted something else. She laughs. Of course. I wanted to be a scribe. I liked letters. Still do. She draws the shape of an M in the dirt with her toe. You tell her you used to sing. She nods, not surprised. We all came from somewhere. You both fall quiet, staring at the temple dome above the skyline. Doves circle it. The marble glows gold in the sun. Then back to work. One man wants you to speak Greek. You don't know Greek. He doesn't either. But he likes the sound of it. So you mutter nonsense syllables while he nods approvingly, lost in some private fantasy. Another asks you to cry, not in pain. Just cry, gently like a widow. You do. You're good at pretending now. You don't remember their names. They never ask for yours. Evening arrives. You eat olives and old cheese, seated on the stone steps outside the tavern. A musician plays a lyre across the square. A sad tune. You hum along before realizing you know it. Your mother used to sing it. You freeze. It's the only thing today that felt real. You sit with that for a while. Then the moment passes. Someone calls your name. The other one, the work name. You rise. Because that's what you do. The night shift. The streets take on a different smell after sunset. Less of sweat and bread, more of smoke and spilled wine. Rome doesn't sleep, not really. It murmurs, hums, breathes differently, like a beast curling in on itself. You light your oil lamp. The flame flickers, casting shadows on the cracked plaster walls. You don't know if the shadows look more like ghosts or memories. Maybe they're the same. Your back aches already. You stretch, run a comb through your hair. You bite your lip until it reddens just enough. This is the ritual, your armor. Outside, the torchlight glows unevenly on the cobblestones. Laughter echoes from the tavern. A man is already vomiting behind the bathhouse wall. A couple argues in a language you don't understand. This is your street, your theater. You pass the temple on your way to the brothel's main room. You pause for a second, not because you're pious, but because it feels wrong to walk past it without acknowledging the gods. You whisper to Venus, not for love, but for fewer bruises tonight. The marble goddess doesn't blink. Inside the brothel, it's busier than usual. Soldiers tonight. You can tell by the noise. And the smell, leather, sweat, blood. They've just returned from somewhere north. Gaul, maybe. They have coin. But they're rough. One of them picks you out with a gesture. Doesn't ask. Just assumes. You follow him upstairs. The room smells like spilled wine and old men. He doesn't say a word to you. You don't say a word back. He leaves his armor on. It clinks every time he moves. He wants to be rough. You brace yourself. But then he breaks down. Cries. Right there. Buries his face in your shoulder like you're a priestess. Not a prostitute. Says he watched his friend die. Says he can't sleep. Says he wants to go home but doesn't know where that is anymore. You hold him. Because that's what he paid for, even if he doesn't realize it. After he leaves, you wash yourself with cold water from a chipped basin. You scrub harder than usual. It's not dirt you're trying to get off. Later, you return to the shared room downstairs. Livia's there. She's humming a song about a fisherman who fell in love with a river sprite. She says she knew him. He drowned, she adds, as if it's just part of the chorus. You lie beside her on a woven mat, back to back. No words. Somewhere down the street, a baby is crying. Somewhere else, laughter. Rome sings its nightly lullaby, part agony, part absurdity. You stare at the ceiling beams and wonder what they've seen. How many women like you? How many dreams? Cracked open and discarded like broken amphory. You close your eyes. You don't sleep. You just wait for morning. The morning after, again. The first sound you hear is not birdsong, but boots on stone. Heavy, dragging footsteps just outside your door. Could be the landlord. Could be a client returning. Or it could be someone looking for someone who isn't you. But close enough. You don't open your eyes. Not yet. The straw under your head is damp. Your back sticks to the mat. Livia is already gone. You finally sit up, rubbing your temples. Last night comes back in flashes. The soldier's tears, the rough grip of another man's hand, the cracked cup of wine someone spilled and didn't clean. The air smells of ash and sour bread. Rome has started its day without you. You dress in silence. The tunic you pull over your head is wrinkled and stained, but passable. You don't have the time or money for better. You rinse your face in a basin of cloudy water. There's a piece of straw stuck to your cheek. You don't bother removing it. At the entrance to the brothel, a Greek merchant is haggling over prices. He wants a discount. Of course he does. They always do when the sun's up. As if daylight somehow makes your work less real. You ignore him and slip into the alleyway, heading for the market square. Not for shopping, you can't afford anything beyond bread and figs. But for the bathhouse nearby. You need to wash. Your body itches with the memory of the night. You pass a butcher's stall where flies fight for territory. The meat is gray at the edges. A woman nearby is selling garlands of wilted flowers. She gives you a look. Not hateful, just tired. like she recognizes the sameness in your eyes. At the bathhouse, you pay the tiny fee. You undress in the women's section, place your things in a niche, and step into the warm water. Other women are already inside. Some chat, some scrub, some stare at nothing. The water is cloudy from oils and soap. A child laughs somewhere down the corridor. For a moment, you forget where you are. A woman next to you introduces herself as Marcella. She's older, missing 2 teeth, but kind-eyed. She asks if you work at the Lupaner. You nod. She says she used to, before her hip gave out. She warns you, don't fall for the men who cry. They're the worst. Then she chuckles and disappears into the steam. You soak for as long as you can. When you finally get out, the skin on your fingers has wrinkled and your shoulders ache from the heat. You dry off with a cloth that smells faintly of mildew. On your way out, you pass a mosaic that reads, Bene lava, bene vive. Wash well, live well. You scoff. That's for people who do one of those things. Back on the street, you hear news. A senator's son was caught with a gladiator. Scandal. The baker raised prices again. More scandal. Someone stabbed someone over a dice game. Normal. Your stomach growls. You find a stall selling leftover bread crusts and use the last coin from last night. The bread is dry enough to chip a tooth, but it's food. As you chew, a little girl walks past and hands you a single marigold. You look up in surprise. She says nothing and walks away. You blink, and for a moment, just a moment, you feel like a person. Then you toss the stem and head back to work. The senator's friend. By mid-afternoon, Rome simmers under the weight of its own sweat. The stones are hot enough to blister bare feet, and every breath tastes like smoke and spice. You're back in your small cell, combing out your hair with fingers instead of a comb, because it broke last week, and replacing it isn't a priority. You apply a fresh layer of rouge, thick enough to hide the lack of sleep. The bronze mirror warps your face slightly. One eye looks higher than the other. You pretend it's just the metal. Then there's a knock. 2 short raps. You know that pattern. It's not a customer, it's an announcement. You open the door. A boy, no older than 12, stands there in expensive sandals. His tunic is too clean for this street. He bows slightly and says, he'll arrive after dusk. You're expected to be prepared. Clean linens. He doesn't wait for a reply. He turns and disappears into the crowd, swallowed like a pebble into a river. You sigh. Senator's friend. You mutter. That's all anyone calls him. No name. No details. Just, he pays well. Don't ask questions. He visits once a month. Always silent, always late. You never speak unless spoken to, never ask for more than what he gives. You prepare the room. Replace the sheet with the least stained one. You light the oil lamp, real oil, not just leftover grease. You even light a stick of imported incense from Syria. It smells like cinnamon and cloves and is worth more than your entire wardrobe. Dusk creeps in, and then you hear it. Boots again. Soft ones. Deliberate steps. You open the door. He enters without a word. Cloak drawn, head low. He doesn't undress. He just sits on the edge of the bed and stares at the wall. Minutes pass. You don't move. Finally, he speaks. Do you ever dream? The question catches you off guard. You nod. What about? You think. Then lie. Being free. Owning a vineyard. Never waking up in Rome. He chuckles barely. Then he stands, removes the cloak. Underneath, his tunic is dyed purple. Only the elite wear that shade. You'll never say anything about this. Ever. You nod. Of course not. He lies down, not next to you, but beside you. No contact. No touch. He just stares at the ceiling. After an hour, he gets up, leaves coins on the table, more than usual, and vanishes without another word. You count them. Enough to last you a week if you're careful. You lie back, stare at the same ceiling, and wonder if senators ever dream of vineyards. 2. The bathhouse conversations. The next morning, your bones ache, but you're alive and paid. That counts as a win. You wrap yourself in a coarse wool cloak and head toward the public baths. Not because it's luxurious, Not because you're free to, but because it's expected. Cleanliness, ironically, is one of Rome's few moral obsessions, even if it's only skin-deep. The bathhouse is a stone cavern of noise and steam. Slaves scrub floors, patrons lounge half-naked, and steam curls from the mouths of men and women as they argue politics, gossip about gladiators, or moan about the rising price of olive oil. You head to the women's section, less crowded, slightly quieter. The water's warm but not clean. Still, it's a relief to sink in, feel the grime loosen from your skin and the stink of the city melt away for a moment. You're not alone. Next to you, a girl barely 17 whispers to another. They say Flavia was taken last night. Didn't return from the Subura. The other woman, older, snorts. Taken? No, sold. She owed her madam. You keep your eyes on the water but your ears open. Poor girl, the younger one says. She was pretty. Too pretty. Pretty's a curse in this job. The older one replies. Gets you noticed by the wrong men. Or the wrong women. You want to speak. Warn them. Tell them how Flavia once cried in your lap after a soldier bit her hard enough to scar. But you say nothing. You just let the warm water soak into your pores, as if it could reach your silence and clean that too. An attendant hands you a strigil, an iron scraper. You scrape oil and dirt off your skin, watching the filth collect like a shadow that peels away. You wash your hair with ash and vinegar. It burns, but it works. And in the mirror-like shimmer of the pool's surface, you catch your reflection. Tired eyes, sharp cheekbones, the faintest line of a bruise near your collarbone. A mark of yesterday. Another woman, one of the older ones, leans in and whispers, "The senator's friend saw you?" You glance at her, startled. She just smirks. "He always leaves the coin in a stack. That's how we know." You nod. She reaches into her satchel and hands you a small clay pot. Mint oil. For the smell. You take it without speaking. In Rome, kindness is rare enough to feel like theft. You exit the bathhouse cleaner, yes, but still carrying everything you soaked with. The streets are louder now, more crowded. Business resumes. Life resumes. And so do you. Clients with togas and secrets. By midday, you're back in your room. The stone walls are no warmer, but your skin is cleaner. The scent of mint oil still lingers faintly, clashing with the reality of your profession. You sit cross-legged on the mattress, combing your damp hair with your fingers. Outside, voices rise and fall like waves. Vendors, drunks, lovers, and liars all tangled in Rome's endless daytime opera. Then a knock. Not the sloppy kind from some tavern drunk. No, this one is precise, measured. You open the door to find a man in a white toga with a purple stripe, senatorial class. He doesn't introduce himself. He doesn't have to. You step aside, and he enters, ducking beneath the low doorframe. His sandals are too clean. His perfume is stronger than yours. You wonder if he wore it to cover the smell of where he's been, or where he's going next. He doesn't touch you right away. Instead, he paces, studying your room like an archaeologist surveying ruins. He comments on your lamp, asks where your comb is from, picks up a small amphora and sets it down with unnecessary care. He speaks like he's rehearsing. "Do you read?" he asks, turning to face you. You blink. "Some." He seems pleased. "Good. I prefer conversation before transactions." You nod. He sits, careful not to wrinkle his toga. You know what this is. He wants to pretend it's different, that you're different. He talks about politics, about the grain shortage, about Cicero's speeches and the rise of young lawyers in the forum. You nod when appropriate. You ask one or two questions. You play the role. Charming, clever, silent when needed. You've done this before. Finally, after nearly half an hour, he stands, walks to the windowless wall, and says, "Do you think Rome is eternal?" You pause. You could say yes. You could lie. But you say instead, "Only if people keep pretending it is." He smiles like you've just confirmed his own secret. Then, without warning, he turns back to you, undresses down to his tunic, and lies back on the mattress like a statue dislodged from its pedestal. And just like that, the play ends. The real scene begins. After, he places a few denarii on the ledge by your mirror. Far more than usual. Enough for bread and meat and maybe even a new set of sandals. He lingers at the door, then says, almost sadly, "You should be somewhere else." You don't reply, because if you knew where else was, you'd already be there. He leaves, and the silence returns. You scoop the coins into your pouch. You stare at the dust motes in the shaft of sunlight creeping through a crack in the wall. This is Rome. Everyone plays a role, even the ones in togas, the public faces and private prices. You don't see the senator again, at least not in person, but you do spot him later that week. He's walking down the Via Sacra, flanked by 2 guards and followed by a cluster of scribes. His toga is whiter than ever, his gestures exaggerated, his voice raised in oration about Roman values. You wonder if his speech includes your name. He doesn't look at you. You slip behind a pillar, unnoticed, forgotten. Just another silent pillar in Rome's foundation of secrets. Later, at a tavern, a woman you know, Dacia, who works 2 streets over, slides onto the bench beside you. She smells of garlic and sweat and expensive perfume. A confusing mix that tells you everything you need to know about her day. "I had one ask me to tie him up and call him Domina," she mutters, chewing olives. You laugh into your wine. "That's a Tuesday," you say. Dacia grins, her gold tooth catching the light. "You ever get one who cries after?" "Once," you reply. "He paid double." You clink cups in mock salute. Neither of you are drunk, but the pretense helps. You watch the crowd flow past the tavern's open windows. Merchants shouting prices, musicians tuning lutes, a child chasing a chicken. The city moves like a beast, never sleeping, never apologizing. "Ever think of quitting?" Dacia asks. You glance at her. Her eyes are soft, almost hopeful. "Quitting?" You repeat. "Yeah, finding a rich patron. Getting out." You sip your wine. "I think about it," you say. "Then I remember, Rome doesn't let you leave. It just changes your costume." The words hang heavy in the air. Dacia doesn't argue. You both sit in silence, watching Rome breathe. And outside, a legion marches by, boots like thunder, banners like fire, the city's power on parade. But behind them, just beyond the spectacle, a woman sweeps the steps of a brothel. Her eyes meet yours, and you both nod, quiet, invisible, and endlessly seen. The business of being seen. The morning after is never glamorous. You wake with the sun, or rather with the noise. Vendors shouting, donkeys braying, someone nearby vomiting into a gutter. Rome doesn't care if you slept or not. Rome moves. You stretch your arms, wincing at the soreness in your lower back. There's a bite mark on your shoulder and a smear of something. Makeup? On your cheek. No time to care. The bucket in the corner smells exactly how you expected. You step over it. Downstairs, the brothel keeper is already shouting at the new girl. She's from Hispania, barely speaks Latin, and still thinks customers will be kind if she's polite. She'll learn. You slip past them to the back room where your tools are stored. Not swords or shields. Your weapons are powder, scent, and fabric. You reapply the usual. A little soot under the eyes to hide fatigue, rouge to fake vitality, perfume to mask humanity. A man once told you he liked your natural scent. You laughed. There's nothing natural about survival. A knock, then another. You inhale, brace your shoulders, and open the door. It's a regular, older, soft, smells like fish and olive oil. He likes to talk before anything else. He always asks about your dreams. You lie. "I want to see the Nile," you say, reciting the fantasy you've told him before. He smiles like it's new. Afterward, he cries quietly. He always does. You fold the coins he gives you into the corner of your tunic and slip out for air. The street is crowded but familiar. There's an old woman selling figs, a child running after a stray dog. 2 gladiators swagger past, nursing bruises and swollen pride. A senator's litter glides by, silk curtains drawn, slaves silent. You catch the briefest glance through the fabric. You wonder if he recognizes you. You wonder if he remembers the night or just the coin spent. Probably not. But he remembers the way you looked. That's the business. Not selling your body. Selling memory. Selling the illusion of being wanted, of being unforgettable, of being seen. You walk on, your shadow long and lean in the Roman sun, trailing behind you like a rumor. Shadows of the Forum. By midday, the city pulses with heat. Marble columns glint under the sun, and the smell of roasting meat mixes with sewage and sweat. You pass through the marketplace not to buy. Gods know you can't afford to browse, but to be seen, to be visible. Visibility is half the game. Men notice, wives sneer, children stare before being yanked away by cautious mothers. You hold your chin high, even when your stomach growls and your sandals cut your heel. There's a saying among women like you, if they look away, you've won. Your feet take you to the Forum, not for politics or philosophy, but for business. It's where senators or equites might sneak glances from under their togas. They never speak to you there, of course, but their eyes speak volumes. A wink, a subtle gesture, a nod toward the subura, the slums where pleasure lives and shame disappears. You rest against a column, blending with the mosaic of Rome's underclass. Hawkers, gamblers, drunk poets quoting Virgil badly. Nearby, a mime performs an exaggerated parody of a nobleman being robbed by his mistress. The crowd laughs. You don't. Too close to truth. A girl from the next street overjoins you. Her name is Linnea. She's been working half as long as you, but looks twice your age. She tells you a guard tried to cheat her last night. Again. You nod. You've heard it all before. The system doesn't protect women like you. That's the point. You exchange tips about a magistrate who pays double for silence, and a sailor who insists on poetry before anything else. Linnea laughs. Men are strange, she says. You both know strange is safer than cruel. A group of foreign merchants passes. They look lost. One catches your eye and smiles. You don't return it. Not today. You're not in the mood to pretend you're exotic. Not in the mood to be someone's souvenir. You and Linnea part ways with a soft touch on the arm. A quiet gesture. A rare kindness. The sun begins to lower. Shadows stretch across the Forum. Business will pick up again soon. But for a moment, just a flicker of time, you allow yourself to exist as a woman. Not a service, not a spectacle. Just a woman, breathing in Rome, breathing out everything else. The visit from the past. You're almost back to your street when you hear your name. Not the name they call you now. Not the name clients whisper or shout, but your old name. The one from before. You freeze. That name belongs to another life. One with softer mornings and fewer bruises. You turn. A boy stands behind you. No, not a boy anymore, a man. Broad shoulders, dirt under his nails, and sun-creased eyes that remember too much. You know him. He was your neighbor once. He stole figs from your mother's garden and cried when the goat died. You haven't seen him in years. He says your name again. This time you answer. He smiles, awkward. You can see him doing the math in his head. The clothes, the makeup, the eyes that don't shine like they used to. He knows what you are. They always do. He asks if you're well. You lie. Of course. You're Roman. He fumbles for conversation. Tells you he works with his father now. Owns half a stall in the Forum. Engaged to a girl from Ostia. Has a dog that hates rain. You nod politely, feeling a little like glass. Transparent and fragile. Then he says something no one has said to you in years. You don't have to do this. The words sting more than they soothe. You want to say, then give me a house, a dowry, a future. You want to say, do you think I chose this? But you don't say any of that. You say, I'm fine, because it's easier. He offers you a coin. You refuse it. Not because you don't need it, but because in this moment you need dignity more. He leaves after a hesitant goodbye. You stand still for a long time, staring at the stone beneath your sandals. It's just another Roman street, but suddenly it feels colder. The city feels bigger. You feel smaller, but there's no time for feeling. Not here. Not now. Not in Rome. The festival of Flora. It's spring in Rome, And that means one thing: Flora is coming. No, not a person. Party. Flora is the goddess of flowers, fertility, and pleasure. And her festival? A riot of color, chaos, and carnality that lasts for days. You don't sleep. You don't stop. You barely remember where you end and the celebration begins. It starts with garlands. Everywhere. Around doors, around necks, in hair, on animals, on statues, especially on statues. Even the sternest marble senator gets crowned with violets like some drunken forest sprite. You tie one around your wrist, then your ankle, then someone else's neck. Laughter spills from balconies. Tambourines rattle in alleyways. Drunken poets shout odes to the moon while slipping into the gutter. And for once, you're not background noise. You're the main event. This is the one time of year Rome doesn't pretend to be respectable. Prostitutes parade through the streets dressed in bright silks and cloaks of sheer fabric, tossing flower petals like confetti. You walk among them, hips swaying, lips red, eyes painted like war. The rules? There are none. A senator grabs your hand. You let him. A baker offers you honey cakes. You take two. Someone smears gold dust across your collarbone, and you don't even ask why. The games begin at the Circus Maximus. There are races and performances and wild animals that don't always behave. You cheer when a lion refuses to chase the deer. Even nature's tired of putting on a show. By nightfall, the city smells of wine, sweat, and flowers. You're tipsy, dizzy, alive. You dance in the middle of the road. Someone plays a flute nearby. You lose track of time, of self, of sadness. For a few hours, you are not a transaction. You are a goddess walking among mortals. You are Flora herself. And then, morning, the garlands wilt, the music stops, and reality, like a Roman tax collector, comes knocking again. But you smile anyway, because for once, the city didn't just use you, celebrated you. The healer's visit. Some nights end with bruises, others with worse. There's no union, no insurance, no help desk to call when your back won't bend, or your jaw still hurts from someone else's idea of passion. But there is her. She comes twice a week. No name, no questions. Just a quiet knock on your door, and the scent of crushed herbs trailing behind her like perfume. She is old. Older than Rome, it feels like, and her fingers are stained green from years of tinctures and poultices. A healer, yes. A midwife, maybe. A magician, possibly. But above all, she is kind. You sit on the edge of your bed, tunic tugged down, back exposed. She clucks her tongue at the bruises like a disappointed ant, then applies something cold and sharp-smelling that bites before it soothes. She doesn't judge, doesn't ask how it happened. She knows. She's been treating women like you for decades. Before Caesar, before empire, before men in togas decided to legislate morality. From a worn leather pouch, she produces a sprig of feverfew for the headaches, a twist of licorice root for the coughing, and, most precious of all, a small clay vial. Inside it, moon oil. You don't know if it's real, or if she made it up, but it helps. You rub it on your temples before sleep. You smear it on cracked lips before smiling. You press the stopper to your chest when nightmares come crawling. You once asked her what it's made of. She laughed and said, "Secrets." Tonight, she stays a little longer. There's a girl in the room down the hall, new, scared, barely 16. She hasn't spoken in days. The healer leaves a jar by her door. No label, just a painted flower on the side. When she's gone, the hallway smells like thyme and ash. You sit for a while in silence. Not in pain, not in service. Just a person with ointment on your back and moon oil under your pillow. Tomorrow will be brutal again. The clients, the cleanup, the empty smiles. But tonight, there is a woman who came just to heal you. And that means the candle goes out asterisk asterisk. The night is late. The wine pots are empty. The streets outside have quieted, save for the faint shuffle of sandals and the distant echo of laughter that doesn't belong to you. You lie down on straw, on cloth, on memory, and stare up at a ceiling that never changes. There's a crack shaped like a fish near the corner. You named it once. It's one of the few things here you can claim. The oil lamp flickers beside you, casting a soft amber glow that smooths the sharpness of everything. It dances on the walls like fireflies that never learn to fly. Some nights, you sleep with your hand closed around the amulet from your mother. Or maybe it was a gift from a kind client. Or maybe you bought it with your own coin because no one else ever would. It doesn't matter. What matters is that for a brief moment, in the hush before sleep, you forget what tomorrow is. You imagine the sea. You've never seen it, but you've heard the way sailors talk about waves, like they're alive, like they forgive. You imagine Rome far behind you. Imagine walking towards something quieter, a place where your name is yours alone, and no one shouts it through a wall. But that's for dreams. Tonight, you're still here, still in this room, still in this life, and yet, you survived another day. That means something. The lamp's flame sputters. You breathe it out. Darkness returns, but it's a gentle one. Stay with us here at the Story Vault. If you found something in these shadows, truth, understanding, or even rest, then subscribe and let your curiosity live here with us. Good night.